Good evening. Welcome to the October 21st Pitt County Board of Commissioners meeting. I'm going to call our meeting to order. Let's have roll call, please. Okay, if everyone would stand with me, and Commissioner McLaughlin's going to provide our invocation.
Shall we pray? Eternal God, we come first of all to thank you. Thank you for life, health, and strength. We ask that you help us to make the decision here tonight that will be pleasing to thee. In thy holy name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Commissioner. Please remain standing. I'm going to invite our Innovation Early College student up to the podium. Please introduce yourself and lead us in the pledge.
Good evening. My name is Abdurrahman Musallam. I am a senior at Innovation Early College High School. I am currently the SGA Student Body President. I have also been recognized as a QuestBridge finalist for the National College Match recipient, in which I will receive a $350,000 four-year scholarship to the universities that include Yale, Duke, Columbia, and Princeton.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I will now lead the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may
Thank
be
you so
seated.
much. You can be seated. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Please vote. Okay, we don't have any public addresses to the board, but we do have a whole lot for the public hearing. So we're going to move to the presentations. Madam Manager, I'll turn that over to you.
Yes, if we could go down front, and if Betsy Haddock, our Employee of the Month, could come forward.
Mr. Chairman, members of Financial Services, and everybody who's joining us this evening, it is my absolute pleasure to recognize this month's Employee of the Month for the month of October as Betsy Haddock, Staff Accountant with Financial Services. Betsy was nominated for her steadfast dedication to Pitt County government. Ms. Haddock consistently exemplifies what it means to work hard and to help others while doing so. Ms. Haddock and one of her coworkers, Ms. Dixon, recently conducted a training for employees on how to learn a program that Ms. Haddock helped to create called STAR. And it's an accounts receivable program. She offered everyone the opportunity to have one-on-one training tailored to their specific functions to use the program, and she took the additional time to share her knowledge and assistance, which was so appreciated to those in attendance. Betsy's been employed with Pitt County since December 1985, and she was recently promoted to Staff Accountant 2 in Accounts Receivable Financial Services this year. Betsy exemplifies a model employee, and we are so thrilled to have her on our team demonstrating those examples of what it means to be an Employee of the Month. So with that, we'll have the chairman present to you a certificate of recognition that reads Employee of the Month for October 2024, presented to Betsy Haddock in Financial Services in recognition of your dedication and exemplary service to Pitt County government and the citizens that we serve. Mr. Chairman, if you'll present that, and you will also have $100 direct deposited into your account.
Where's she going? Did she take a picture?
We did the picture earlier.
Okay, moving on, we have our public hearing for the discharge of firearms ordinance. Matt, we're going to have you read any guidelines that we have on that, and then we will start with the ones that are supportive of this ordinance.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. With this public hearing now open, Pitt County welcomes all comments on the discharge of firearms ordinance. Please state your name, address, and the name of any organization you may be representing. Each speaker will be allowed up to 3 minutes to speak.
Okay, Madam Manager, I will let you start by calling the ones that are in favor of this ordinance.
Okay, first person signed up in favor is Beth Miller.
And Mr. Chair, just for the record, if you could declare the public hearing open.
I declare the public hearing open.
My name is Beth Miller, 1856 Staten Mill Road, Bethel, North Carolina. You've seen me before.
Can you move that mic over a little, please?
Oh,
Thank you. Thank you.
is that better? The ordinance presented here today does not affect anyone's right to keep and bear arms. It does not restrict discharge of firearms in lawful defense of person or property. It addresses problems seen in Pitt County, the problem of discharge of firearms over, from, and onto the property of others, the problem of repeated discharge of firearms in the middle of the night, the problem of firearms being discharged absent backstops or with inadequate backstops, the problem of firearms being discharged unreasonably close to buildings, people, and animals, the problem of no enforceable rules allowing law officers to provide interventions when needed. Those who would disagree, saying we already have enough rules, need to be aware what current ordinances do not cover. Shooting range regulations do not apply to incidental target practice on private property. The hunting ordinance applies only to hunting. The noise ordinance is enforceable only when a representative of law enforcement is present measuring the noise level. There exists nothing saying people have no right to discharge firearms on, over, through, or onto property belonging to someone else. Nothing states that discharged projectiles must stay off property belonging to someone else. Nothing defines safe discharge of firearm behaviors. There are far too many instances of unsafe, inconsiderate behaviors demonstrated with the discharge of firearms. We need to protect the safety and rights of those who are not discharging firearms also. We cannot ignore stating what the reasonable behaviors are on this subject. We cannot ignore giving law enforcement what they need to enforce responsible and safe use of firearms. Freedoms and rights come with responsibilities. This ordinance addresses some of those responsibilities. We are calling for safe, reasonable, responsible use of firearms. Unimpeded, the range of a projectile from a .22 is 1.5 miles, 9mm 3 miles, 50 caliber 6 miles. Adequate backstops prevent these projectiles from ending up out of the view of the person discharging the firearm, assuring they do not end up in people, animals, or buildings. Stopping a projectile is the responsibility of whomever discharged it into the world. A target is not a backstop. A stand of trees is not a backstop. And I will cease.
Thank you, ma'am.
Next listed in favor is Joe Miller.
Hi, I'm Joe Miller. I live at the same address as Beth, State Mill Road, Bethel. And hello to family, friends, neighbors. You took up this ordinance and had some people work on it years ago. My understanding is they were good, knowledgeable people that worked on it, and you just never discussed it or had a vote on it due to lots of opposition. Since that time, we've continued to have a handful of problems with irresponsible use of firearms. What I'm aware of, starting with Mr. Dixon, in a small neighborhood with homes that were close together. What we have in place is not working. We need more. We'd like your help. I used to be a landlord. In landlord-tenant law, there's a phrase that came up, quiet enjoyment. And I think the right of quiet enjoyment is something that everybody has, and they are allowed to experience that on their property. When there's fear of bullets coming onto our property from an inadequate backstop, we do not have our rights of quiet enjoyment. This is not about taking away rights from gun owners. It's about protecting rights of people in their homes to have quiet enjoyment. This is a basic right. We have other means where things that we do on our land with quiet enjoyment impact us. I live next to a paving plant. There are rules and regulations in place that the paving plant cannot disturb my quiet enjoyment. Their smoke and smog, their crap is not allowed to come and impact my breathing. When they put out black soot, it's not allowed to land on my car or my house. I grow pecans. If I want to go out and use a sprayer to put out a pesticide or a fungicide, it's not allowed to leave my land. Bullets should not be allowed to leave the land of the person shooting without permission. I'm a retired nurse. My wife's a retired nurse. We work trauma. We saw the impact of bullets. One of the risks of medical work is there's high-risk, low-volume procedures that are performed. A bullet leaving from a property in unsafe conditions is likely a low-volume occurrence, but it's high risk. So we need to stop shooting up stuff at night. We need a good backstop that keeps the bullet from leaving the property. Thank you. Please take this up and pass this ordinance.
Thank you.
The last one I have signed up in favor of the ordinance is Susan Redding.
I think I can write this down. Can you hear me okay? Members of the Pitt County Board of Commissioners, my name is Susan Redding. I've been a resident of Pitt County for over 45 years. I live at 601 South Elm Street in Greenville. I, too, am a retired healthcare professional and a volunteer member of the Pitt County Firearms Safety Coalition. This coalition is housed in the Eastern Carolina Injury Prevention Program at ECU Health. The coalition was formed to address the public health problem of premature death due to homicides and suicides related to the unsafe use of firearms. The coalition's goal is to promote the safe use of firearms in the communities of Eastern North Carolina. I feel that the passage of a gun safety ordinance for Pitt County can help significantly to keep our communities safe for gun owners and non-gun owners alike. At the present time, the accidental discharge of a firearm landing in an unintended location has the potential to cause severe injury or even death for a resident or a visitor to Pitt County. To be clear, this ordinance, as others have said, is not about taking anyone's right to gun ownership away, just as regulations around other potentially lethal items, such as motor vehicles and medications, have not restricted ownership of these items. Car seats, seat belts, established speed limits, and regular inspections have served to reduce motor vehicle tragedies. Child-proof caps on medications serve to protect our children. None of these regulations around the safe use of cars and medications proposes that a person's right to ownership of vehicles or use of medications is taken from them. When we live in community, we must recognize that our actions and our inactions can affect all of us. We all have the right to live in communities that are as safe as possible for everyone. Thank you to each of you for helping all of the residents of Pitt County feel safer by your actions related to this ordinance. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, was that our last one?
Yes.
In favor of?
There may be an additional sign-up sheet downstairs when there's capacity in the room to come up that may have an additional 4 on it. But of the list I have signed up now, we can move to those against.
Okay, we'll move forward with those that are against.
First one I have listed is Mark Erickson.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'm Mark Erickson. I'm an NRA certified instructor and a State of North Carolina certified firearm safety instructor. I'm also an appointed member, advisory member of the North Carolina Criminal Justice Information Network. And as such, I'm concerned with the responsible use of firearms and the safety of our law enforcement officers also. Responsible firearm owners need to train regularly to maintain their skills. And you can't solve the problem of irresponsible firearm ownership by trying to enjoin all the people that are responsible in your county. I was asked to attend this meeting by numerous Pitt County members of my organizations, which are Grassroots North Carolina and Rights Watch International. We are supporters of the Second Amendment rights of our citizens. I've read your proposed ordinances in detail, and I'm also familiar with your existing noise ordinances. And our legal staff has also reviewed your proposed ordinances. There are issues with establishing the additional regulations limiting safety training on private property, and these are what I'm most concerned about in your ordinance. Take a moment to address these. Passing new law does not necessarily solve the problems you're experiencing in your county with irresponsible firearm misuse, and you could create more problems in what you're doing. There may well be existing common law and statutory law in this state which covers the sheriff actions you'll need to deal with your actual problems. And Pitt County is trying to address these with a blanket elimination of safety training for all of your citizens that have private property ranges right now. In 1997 and in 2015, the state passed a law, 14-409.46, the Sport Shooting Range Protection Act. And what this does is it enjoins you from passing regulations which will put additional regulation on private shooting ranges and public shooting ranges. You also have Article 36A, which includes a disorderly conduct statute, which can be applied to people that are being irresponsible with firearms in your county. There are also specific common law issues like enjoining affray and going about armed to the terror of the population, which addresses things that are occurring on public streets. 14-288.4, the disorderly conduct statute, can probably be applied to the situations you're experiencing with the irresponsible use of guns in your county. The nccriminallaw.sog.unc.edu site has issued a bulletin on the common law record of going armed to the terror of the people, which could be a good reference for you. You can pass these new ordinances, but they may not be enforceable, and that's the big issue. Can I go on for a moment?
If you could wrap it up in about the next 30 seconds.
I certainly can. So what can happen is you can pass these, but they may not be enforceable because somebody can refer to the state laws that I've mentioned and get these reversed in court. It can be very, very frustrating for law enforcement officers to actually enforce the law, go to court, and then have these things reversed. Briefly, in 5 years, from 2018 to 2022, the major crime of felon in possession with a firearm was charged 49,050 times in this state. There were only 298 cases that were actually prosecuted to conviction. Can you imagine how frustrating that is for law enforcement? You could have the same type of thing occur when you pass the law as it's currently drafted. So I'd urge you to consider revising it and looking more in depth to it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Patty Richardson.
Hey, my name is Patty Richardson. I reside at 282 Bowen Circle in Ayden, North Carolina, and I've been a resident of Pitt County for 62 years. One of the gentlemen before me said that this came up a few years ago and that it just kind of got dropped. Well, actually, it came up in April of 2021, and I spoke to every commissioner, and there were several things about the ordinance that was extremely troubling. One example was that for my business, I was going to have to go to 13 other businesses surrounding me and ask permission for me to continue to do business the way I've done it. So that was one thing that the board has taken out the new ordinance. However, that was just strictly for doing work inside my business. My family's been in the outdoor shooting sports business since 1960. My daddy was responsible for 5 outdoor shooting sports businesses in Pitt County. 3 of those 5 are still in business today. We are a 3rd-generation business, for the family-owned business, for the last 64 years. I don't think there's anybody in this room that's going to say that we're not concerned with firearm safety, which we all promote. But there are concerns about this ordinance from a business perspective. I have 15 employees that depend on my business to pay for their bills and to take care of their families. One of those things that we do is we teach classes. I have purchased property in the county that has been used for years to teach these classes because it's essential that there's marksmanship included in the classes. It's actually law. To tell me that I can't use my property that I bought for a purpose that's been successfully used with no problems because somebody somewhere did something they shouldn't have done, it just seems more appropriate and more reasonable to me to address that person that did wrong, not penalize the rest of the thousands of citizens that are law-abiding citizens. You know, we all in my business follow the law, and the people that we work with follow the law, and in order to follow the law, we will not be able to do business the way we've been customarily doing it, and it will hurt. The gentleman that spoke before me, he talked about firearms instructors. Do y'all know how many firearms instructors that y'all have in eastern North Carolina and Pitt County? Let me tell you, you've got a lot. And they have taught classes for the safety of the people in this community for many years. And now to tell them they can't go out and do their classes the way they've done successfully is just wrong. You know, I don't think it's the role or the goal of this governing board to prevent anybody from making a living. That's something that really needs to be considered. I'm just going to say this. My daddy spent a lot of time on this board. He fought relentlessly for the rural eastern North Carolina, rural Pitt County especially, and to even know that this is coming up before this board right now, he would roll over in his grave. I mean, it's just sad, and I hope that y'all will reconsider this because you got a lot of people that make a living from this. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry. Donna Wilson.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for letting me talk. My name is Donna Wilson. I live at 3410 East Wilson Street in Farville, North Carolina. I lived through a situation where I, in 2015, became very passionate about teaching others. And I want to tell you, in 2015, and since then, I became a United States Concealed Carry Association instructor, NRA instructor, pistol, rifle, refused to be a victim. I'm a chief range safety officer. I'm a concealed carry instructor in Pitt County as well. I also am the Armed Women of America leader here in Pitt County as a national profit. And I also represented North Carolina and Washington, D.C., talking to our legislators about our Second Amendment rights. It's not easy for me to get up and talk to a whole lot of people, but I can do it. But just so you know, I want you to understand, even for me, the other night, I'm sitting in my yard in Farmville, I hear gunfire. You know what I did? I'm enjoying a bonfire. My dog runs in. You know what I did? I continued to enjoy my bonfire. It is the rights of people to be able to use their land as they see fit. I am hired by families, churches, organizations to go out and train. My passion is self-defense. That's not about hunting. That requires ongoing training. And we use property all the time in a safe manner. There's never been an issue. I'm a law-abiding citizen. I know the restrictions. We know restrictions, and we operate within those restrictions. If there is a situation that needs to be handled in a neighborhood, please handle it. Please don't restrict my ability to earn extra income. Yes, I'm a medical social worker. I see what happens when there's negligent discharges. But I will tell you right now, if there is property and they're legally able to use it as they need to be seen fit to be able to train. So please consider that. We're in opposition of it. Please don't, impede on our ability to earn income. Thank you.
Thank you.
Graham Taylor.
Can everyone hear? Perfect. So my name is Graham Taylor. I live at 3173 Shepherd Mill Road for part of the year, and part of the year I spend in the city of Miami in Florida. As somebody who's got a foot in both an urban area and a rural area, I'll tell you that I come to Pitt County to enjoy time with friends and also sort of the sense of freedom that living in a rural area provides. Also, as someone who lives in both camps, I can see that this is yet another example of people who live in a densely populated area imposing their problems and solutions and ways of life on rural folks. And frankly, it has no place here. I think there are plenty of narrowly tailored solutions that could address the problem of negligent discharge, which no responsible firearms owner advocates at all. Noise ordinances with the city of Greenville that already exist, and also, the potential for folks who live in densely populated, non-incorporated areas to incorporate themselves and have these locally tailored solutions stop the problem of negligent discharge. But, broadly, I just see this as a huge overreach that's going to effectively prevent responsible gun owners from being able to train on their own properties, where many of us have acres and acres of land to train on that don't impact anyone if we responsibly discharge firearms there. It's not anyone's business but the folks who are on that land. And rest assured that if this ordinance is passed, as you can see already, there's interest from very well capitalized organizations to fight this legally and to also fight this from a campaign standpoint against those who voted into place. So I would just say let's find a solution that works and that doesn't force a different way of life on people who've been here for generations and people who come here to enjoy the character of this place, which is very, very special. So that's all I have to say about that for right now, but certainly please reconsider passing this, because this is just a huge overreach, and frankly it's shocking to see this in Pitt County.
Thank you, sir.
Chandler Ebeling.
My name is Chandler Ebling, and I live in Stokes, North Carolina. I've been a resident of Pitt County for almost 20 years now, and previously I did live inside of the city limits where we were not able to discharge firearms. Then I had to attend a friend's land or go somewhere else to shoot. We've now been able to get outside of the city limits where we're still in Pitt County, but we're able to shoot guns whenever. To me, it doesn't make sense that there's people in certain areas, like people have spoken about before, that are discharging firearms at times where I'm outside of the city limits. I am well away from everybody else. I've handled firearms for most of the years of my lives. Whenever I'm discharging them, it's in a safe manner, and I do still need to train and practice over time, right? So I'd like to address the fact that it just does not apply to those people who are law-abiding citizens who have been doing this for time over time, and who would like to continue to be able to use their right to bear arms, to practice, to train, to do those type of things. On top of that, if this bill is passed, I would love to know how it's going to be enforceable. Previously, when it was the WITN story that came out back in 2023, of course, they mentioned the sheriffs had to be there for the sound when it was being, when the guns were going off or things like that. Like Mark talked about earlier as well, this is just going to waste resources for these sheriffs when guns are being shot. This is going to make a lot of people angry as well, and it's not going to be able to be something that they're going to continue to keep up with on a higher level when it comes to the sheriffs actually, taking care of those noise ordinances, right? So I just like to know how it's going to be enforceable as well, but I'm also very against this and don't believe it should be passed. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Tanner Ebeling.
Hello, my name is Tanner Ebling. I live at 3173 Shepherd Mill Road as well. I live on about a 40-acre farm in Stokes, North Carolina. As well as the previous speaker, I'm his brother. We grew up inside the confines of city limits and were able to move outside of them and be able to practice shooting. I've grown up around guns, been a law-abiding citizen my entire life. I'm a concealed carry owner. And I also train routinely at a sort of makeshift range at my own farm with adequate backstop outside of any risk of that bullet traveling somewhere it should not. And I believe, looking at as I was reading through the ordinance and what would be required to enact an NRA-approved backstop, it would require, to begin with, buying the $53 27-chapter book that outlines the specifications for that backdrop, and then building it itself, which would be hundreds to thousands of dollars. All of this I'm within, a quarter mile to my nearest neighbor. So I don't see how that's quite necessary. I understand the concerns from the speakers who are in favor of this proposed ordinance, but I also think there is a difference and a separation to make, a distinction between rural and more suburban citizens. And I think that while there are concerns of negligent discharge, I don't think that necessarily applies to the entire county, and I don't think that this is the proper course of action to enforce safer standards of firearm use. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Ty Cahoon.
Good evening. My name's Ty Cahoon. I appreciate you letting me get up here and speak for a minute. I would just like to say I disagree full-heartedly with this bill. Going off what Chandler and Tanner said, this will be a waste of our sheriff's resources. It'll be punishing to law-abiding gun owners. And simply, what's the point of owning private land if we're being told what needs to be done on this private land? You know, our right to bear arms is more than just hunting. There's many gun owners out there who own guns to protect themselves and their families, to train, to practice. And there's many threats that can come about from this bill. I feel like people are going to rebel, and I don't agree and think that's right, but I think people are going to feel like their rights are being taken away, and this will make it harder for our sheriffs, make it more dangerous. And we just need to remember that as Americans, everyone who is not a felon should be able to own a gun, and we should be able to train and practice on private land if it's outside of city limits. I do believe that there is an issue with negligent fire in the city, and this bill is only targeted to hurt and affect people who are law-abiding citizens. I don't see this bill being effective in stopping the people who are doing so crime, and I think there needs to be a better way to go about it and find a good medium ground, because people should be able to use their firearms and train on their private property and be prepared for whatever may come, as long as they are abiding the laws, staying on their property, and staying outside the city limits. That being said, I really don't have much more to say. I appreciate your time this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Bobby Norville.
Good evening. Bobby Norville, Highway 222 in Falkland area. I've listened to several of these meetings where people have come up and talked about why we should do this and why we shouldn't. I hear more people talk about the noise problem than any other problem. If it's a noise problem, there has to be a better way. I mean, you had two deputy sheriffs here about a month ago explaining why the noise ordinance wouldn't work for this situation. You know, he gave the fact that, number one, it was a misdemeanor, and when they went out there, the noise had to be going on so they could measure it with a meter. Your proposal here is also going to be a misdemeanor. So if someone calls about someone shooting at nighttime now, and by the time the deputy gets there, they've gone inside, aren't we back where we started from? There's not a lot going on that they can do. That's what it sounds to me like. Also, in the other meetings, there's been two main places that have complained. The one subdivision and then the Shepherd Mill Road are the two places that I've heard that only had complaints. There's two places out of your hundreds of square miles of county. I mean, you want to make everybody suffer for the problems of 2 to 3 individuals? It doesn't seem right. Also, a couple years ago, this was brought up, and it was in your packet, I think the same night that either the same night the deputies were here or the next meeting. But it was supposed to come before a vote, and at the beginning of the meeting, it was taken off the agenda. And according to the minutes of that agenda that was in your packet, at the time, Manager Elliott wanted some board rules of procedure about it being taken off. And at the time, County Attorney Ms. Gallagher stated that as it relates to the motion, it terminated discussion from the agenda this evening, and that very item, the way it currently reads, and cannot be brought back for further discussion. And it was also later clarified from another commissioner as the two that had voted against that it could never be brought again. So my question to you is, can we even have a vote on this? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Jonathan Riggs.
Thank y'all folks in advance for your time this evening. My name is Jonathan Riggs. I live on Highway 121 just outside of Greenville, live on a little farm out there. I was born and raised here in Pitt County. My daddy was born and raised here in Pitt County. My granddaddy was as well. In fact, and I'm telling myself for being a little bit of a history nerd, my 6 times great granddaddy was born and raised in Pitt County as well. Henry Ellis was his name. He was a member of the Committee of Safety in the 1770s. His name is actually on a plaque in the courthouse, along with a number of other fine folks from Pitt County who had the nerve to stand up to the most powerful government in the world at that time, Great Britain, specifically the king thereof. And I drove by his grave actually last Friday on the way through town, and I got to thinking, and I'd already had this on my mind a little bit. He would spin over in that grave if he knew how restrictive we were being on things like firearms discharge. Like I said, I'm a little bit of a history nerd, so history lesson for everybody who may not have thought about it since grade school. North Carolina refused to sign on to the U.S. Constitution because, amongst other things, it did not do enough to protect our right to bear arms. So as some previous speakers mentioned, this was not necessarily about restricting people's rights. Well, that's not correct. It says shall not be infringed. Little history lesson today. So let's put a pin in that. That's the big picture, step back, big picture view of things. Let me ask some specific questions about this particular ordinance. One of which is, what has changed substantially in the last 3.5 years since this was brought to the table in April or spring of 2021? At that time, it was pulled from the agenda, and I actually spoke with a number of you same folks that were on the commissioner's board then. It was pulled from the agenda because of the massive amount of public disapproval. It wasn't even brought to a vote. So what has changed so substantially in 3.5 years that it's now coming back when I've only heard a little bit of stuff here and there? Another question is, and I actually had some back and forth with, at the time, county attorney, now county manager, congratulations, Ms. Gallagher. Why were no meeting minutes or records taken by the Firearms Ordinance Committee at that time, which essentially drafted what's before you now and what's going to be before you in a couple of weeks? There were no recorded minutes of that meeting. Now, at the time, the county attorney told me that she had deemed that it didn't fall under the North Carolina Open Meetings Law. That was an opinion. I'm sure some other attorneys might have a different opinion, but what I put to you is that best practice? Is that the best way to serve the citizens of Pitt County, by not keeping minutes and records of how the committee even crafted the ordinance? So rhetorical question, something to ponder in y'all's discussions in the next couple of weeks. Another thing I wanted to mention, I mentioned that I live on a small farm. I actually have a degree in animal science. That's my background. One of the things that stood out to me, see the word livestock. For starters, domestic livestock is a little bit like a double negative. Livestock are domesticated, so a little tweak for somebody who was somebody did a good job on the edits there. I'll wrap up in about that 30 seconds if you don't mind.
Thank you.
What's the difference between shooting 275 feet away from somebody's livestock versus the 300 from the ordinance? What if the cows are on the back end of the 10 acres when somebody's shooting and they want to make a complaint because you're less than 300 feet from the fence line? Well, the cows may not be up to date, or you don't know the cows might have got moved to that pasture. What if the cow's not there by the time the sheriff gets there? So that one is very problematic. And why does it matter if you're not shooting in the direction of the livestock, even if you have a backstop? Apparently it has to be an NRA-approved backstop. I don't want to know what that's going to cost or what I'm going to get taxed for that improvement on my land. but what's the difference there? So there's a lot of specific questions about this. I could go on for more and more minutes, but I appreciate y'all's time. Those are some things specifically I wanted y'all to think about, and I appreciate your time this evening. Thank you much.
Thank you, sir.
David Roebuck.
Good evening. My name is David Roebuck. I didn't come as prepared with notes as everybody else did, but I'm going to fumble through this the best I can. I think what you're doing is taking the rights of law-abiding citizens in this county away from them. This is a start to a downfall that it's a domino effect. You're going to start here, and then something else is going to come up. I look in the room, and I see a lot of these people that I know and I hunt with right now. I can't name one of them that don't go out there and hunt, that haven't been through courses, don't have the license, that even have a criminal background. Not a one of them I see in here are going to do anything to do anything injustice to other people. There's organizations that there's a dusk to dawn, and I'm probably jumping on another person's little bit of his thunder right now because he's a friend of mine. But there's a dusk to dawn ordinance in there. There's a lot of organizations in this county that have fundraisers called turkey shoots that we operate after dusk. You put this into effect, then you have the sheriff's department out there shutting us off from raising funds, and it's anywhere from $2,500 to $6,000 in a month's time that we raise, that the county is not giving us money. We're doing it ourselves, so that we don't have to come back to the county and ask for that money. So you need to consider that. But it's like others have already said. You're going to take away from the sheriff's department. They're going to create more man hours and come back to you for more money. Why are we doing this? It was done away with before. Let's not do it again. Let's just get rid of it and keep what we've already got in order.
Thank you, sir.
Clyde Naylor.
Good evening. It's Clyde Naylor, 2272 State Mill Road, Bethel. I'm here on behalf of State House Fire Department. As David just alluded to, that was what I was going to talk about, was the turkey shoot. In the ordinance, as it's written, we're going to have to, as a department, wholeheartedly not support it, simply because on item number, section 5, item number 11, it addresses turkey shoots. But the very last section of that says, and, I got small print here, and is not in violation of section 4A 2 through 4. If you go back to 2 through 4, it says number 2 is between the hours of dusk and dawn. As he alluded to, our turkey shoot starts at 7. Our first turkey shoot this year is scheduled for November 2nd. I looked this up this afternoon. The dusk starts, or sunset starts at 6:12 p.m. Gets earlier and earlier. After this year, we no longer be able to hold a turkey shoot. It is a fundraiser. We've been doing it for 15 to 18 years, making pretty good money off of it, as he said, but it's also a tradition. We have a father and son, excuse me, that have traveled from Fayetteville for years to come to this turkey shoot. We have people from Nash County, we have people from Wilson County, we have people from Wake County. We have firefighters from all over Pitt County that come and support us. As I said, we cannot support this ordinance because as it is, January 1st, we will no longer be able to hold a turkey shoot with the ordinance as it is written. And it's a tradition we've had for years, and we'd like to continue that. And I thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Jamie Tyndall. I'm sorry. I think it's Tyndall. Tugwell. Thank you. My apologies.
Hello. Thank y'all for letting me speak. I'm Jamie Tugwell. I'm the coach for the Farmville Wildlife Competition Team. I'm going to take things in a little bit different direction than where we've been. I agree with everything that's been said, but I've been coaching children for the last 15 years. I'm a certified wildlife safety instructor. I am a RSO. We use a private farm, and just a few years ago we looked into changing locations, and we looked into the cost of getting a NRA certified range set up, and there's no way. Now you figure I coach 25 to 30 kids every year on gun safety, on being responsible. It ain't just about learning how to shoot, it's about being responsible, being ethical. If you pass this ordinance, that's over. Now you think about how many children are going to miss out on being able to be taught the right way to hunt, the right way to shoot, the right way to handle a gun. You got enough problems in town with people that don't have any idea how to use a gun. Those are the people that's showing up in the emergency rooms. I've been doing this, knock on wood. We've never had an accident. Now, with this ordinance within 300 feet, I'm like I think somebody else said, now I'm in a situation, even if I get the written permission, I'm in a situation of having to get written permission from like 10 different people. You know, and I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm just saying that this situation is not healthy for this county. I grew up here in Pitt County. Matter of fact, I grew up right down the road here where Ironwood Golf Course is, before it was the golf course. You hear gunshots all day, every day during certain times of the year. I mean, that's just part of life, you know. But also, the other aspect of it, there are laws. The North Carolina Wildlife has laws about shooting across people's land without written permission. There's also, the North Carolina Wildlife also has laws that say you can hunt coyotes at night. So by passing this ordinance, you're taking those people that like to hunt coyotes at night, you're taking that away from them. You know, so it's easy to say you're not taking away somebody's rights, but you kind of are. And I don't know how that plays out politically of whose law supersedes whose, but there are laws in place to remedy the problems that I've heard were the problem. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Dwayne Marriott.
My name is Dwayne Marriott. I live over in Winterville. I am a certified instructor for concealed carry. I teach here in Pitt County. I also am a certified instructor for the NRA. I'm a chief range officer and a pistol instructor for the NRA. The better part of the last 15 years, I've been teaching for the 4-H Pitt County Shooting Sports Club. I am against this ordinance. Just my grandfather used to say an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Most of the 4-H instructors I know can't afford to upgrade their ranges. My range has backstops, soil backstops, and distances that are required. The average cost of a brand new NRA certified range is between $10,000 and $150,000, depending on how many lanes you have, shooting lanes, and how much of the backing you need. My biggest push is for education. If you enact this ordinance, it's going to limit a lot of those ranges for other instructors in this room right now to where we can't teach our youth how to hunt safely and how to shoot safely. I have never had a problem on my range. None of my kids have ever shot anybody or themselves. We have had several folks go to national, teaching them the proper way to shoot guns, archery. They can achieve much more in their life because that can afford them scholarships down the line. Okay. I am also a healthcare professional. I started off as a hospital corpsman with the Marines. I'm a physician assistant. I have seen combat wounds. I've seen self-inflicted wounds. I've seen children die from their gunshot wounds. That ounce of prevention is teaching them proper gun safety to begin with. Don't take that right away from us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Next, I have Marcus Karachin.
Marcus Carrigan, Aiden. Family's been here since 1600s and hunting and family, hunting on our firearm artists for all these years. We've never had a problem like so many others out here. But I want to keep this short because somebody here has done such a great job. It's pretty much just about covered everything. And thank you, everybody. But I know one thing I didn't hear. How do you go coon hunt at night? There's hunting at night, too. So, yeah, I mean, there's different things that this applies to, and you do. You know, it affects law-abiding citizens. It takes their rights away from them. And every time we pass a gun ordinance, it's chipping away at your Second Amendment rights. Because every time you get more and more chipping away and chipping away and chipping away and chipping away, eventually the Second Amendment's not any good. We just had, the concealed carry not too long ago in county property that was passed. And we had directly asked, define county property. Nobody would answer that question. Somebody might go throw their trash away at the dump and get a concealed carry ticket or something, you know, because they broke the law. They went on county property. Anyways, all I want to say is you guys please make the right decision for once. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Josh Richardson.
Hey, Josh Richardson, Aiden. I'm going to keep it short. What is the premise behind this ordinance? The premise is not safety. If the premise was safety, you wouldn't have the stipulation of having the neighbor's permission in order to do something on your property. The premise behind the lawsuit is to take a private nuisance civil matter and turn it into a public nuisance criminal matter. The county has no business getting involved in civil matters. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Marcus Jeanette. And I'm now to the list from downstairs. Okay, we'll hold that one. Scott Whitley.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, Scott Whitley, live out there towards Blackjack. Just want to address a few, sort of poke some holes in this thing. You know, like he said before, I don't want to ask my neighbors for permission to do anything on my land. You know, I do not want a neighbor to ask me for permission to do what they need to do on their land. If it's about livestock, bulls are dangerous. I do not want a bull next to my property, but I'm okay with that. You know, all sorts of livestock's dangerous. The backstops, we shoot skeet. We shoot a lot of skeet at my place. We shoot nighttime skeet. My son is a competitive skeet shooter. We shoot all the time. This will definitely take away his rights. Let's see. The backstop for skeet shooting, that doesn't happen. Hunting at night is a lawful practice in North Carolina. That would take away our rights to do that. Basically, I moved out of the city limits years ago so I can have rights and privacy, and this would be taking away my privacy. Y'all just make the good decision I think that we all should make. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Scott, I got one question for you. Did Laura have that baby today?
She had it right now, buddy.
All right.
I think she's about 6 centimeters right now.
Thank you.
Is it Joe or Jack Dixon?
Joe Dixon.
Joe Dixon.
Good evening, Commissioners. I was here in September, as you recall, and I'm from Holly Pine subdivision. I've lived there since it began. We bought the first home. We've been there 30 years. As of last year, we had some neighbors move in that wanted to use their backyard as target practice, and they use all kinds of guns. And we've tried to reach them. We've called the sheriff department numerous times, and the last action we got was that they would have to catch them in the act of shooting before they could enforce them. And of course, they're smarter than that. And we're here again. I'm for the amendment, but We're not protesting no one's right to bear arms. We're just here about noise, getting something done so that we can rest at night. We live in a subdivision where there's nurses, there's school teachers, there's entrepreneurs, family, we even have children and dogs, and everybody's entitled to their rest. And I still question, we didn't mean to tie all this into everything that I've heard tonight. All we're asking, there should be some noise, something in this county that can be enacted that does not threaten the rights of gun owners. That's all we're saying. I have guns. I was raised on a farm. Dad had 3. Like at night, he hunted so we'd have meat in the house. So it's not about the gun. We just want something done for the noise and disturbance in our neighborhood. That's not a whole lot to ask for. We all pay taxes. We've got a nice neighborhood. I would like to keep it that way. Thank you, ma'am and sir. And thank everybody for coming. And you that carry guns, I got them too. I don't want them to take my rights away. But we need to get some control about noise. If the houses are less than 100 feet apart, you know that ain't the place to do no target practice. Good evening.
Thank you, sir.
Chad Cannon. James Satterwhite.
It's been a while since I spoke to y'all. Got a lot of new faces up here. I see some old faces up here, but it's been a while. I'm James Satterwhite. I'm born and raised in Pitt County. Been living in rural Pitt County for about 32 years now. Grew up in Greenville. And, you know, I worked for the sheriff's, well, I was a police officer 5 years, a deputy sheriff 25 years, retired about 19 years ago. And I've been on numerous calls about shooting in subdivisions. Now, if I can find that person, you know, they're shooting when I arrive, I'm going to do a little checking on them. I'm going to see if they're legally able to own a gun, if they're legal of age to own a gun. I'm going to see if they're a convicted felon. And also, I carried a noise meter in the trunk of my car, and they probably still do that. Had a noise meter about that big with a little microphone on it, you know, a little receiver on it. But there's numerous things you can do, you know. And then if they're on the right-of-way, if they're walking down the street of the subdivision, even on the right-of-way, I might even charge them with going to buy armed to deter the public, which is an old common law, which is still in the books. I've arrested people for it. You can do that. So there's numerous ways to do it. But infringing upon my property rights and my gun rights, it don't sit good with me. I don't think it sits. There's a ton of people in the downstairs. So many people, you can't even get them in here. There's a room full of people in the emergency management room. When you have 2 or 3 people make a complaint, and then you're going to pass this order, and these people, some of these people are actually kind of on the, how would you say, not model citizens. I'll get ready to say thugs, but some of them might be thugs, you know. But if they're shooting in the air, showing off, they're showing off a lot of times, showing off they got heat, you know, showing the other criminals that they got heat, you know. But there's ways you can do it without infringing upon the rights of about 80,000 rural people. You know, I don't like anything that infringes upon my property rights and my Second Amendment rights. And I hadn't seen it being such a problem. I mean, has anyone's house been shot up or anyone had any personal injury from it? I mean, have they? Your house been shot up?
Mine.
Oh, really?
Bullet hole I can show you.
Oh, one bullet, yeah. A straight bullet. I got hunters that hunt behind my house all the time. It sounds like a battleground on opening deer day, you know. but that's the way it is. But, you know, I hope y'all reconsider this. We're not Mecklenburg County, we're not Wake County, but still a lot of rural Pitt County, you know, and not a real, you know, densely populated county. Well, I just think it's bad to, you know, enforce the laws on the books. You know, don't make additional rules and regulations, especially when you see half the citizens. You got more people objecting to it than you do for it. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, sir.
Hopefully I won't be back up here for another 10 or 15 years.
Stephanie McClawhorn. Okay, did I hear Jerry Fisher? Yes, ma'am. Come on.
Good evening. My name is Jerry Fisher. I live on Harold Street in Greenville, and just wanted to come and speak and oppose this proposal. As a matter of fact, you guys are hearing from a lot of people, but what you don't know is the number of people that are downstairs that aren't going to be coming up to speak. There's a whole lot of people that didn't come tonight, but there's a whole lot of people that are downstairs, and they've slowly kind of ticked off the list a little bit because they're hearing other people speak and expressing their views. So you're really not getting a full view of everybody that's opposed to this, okay? The other thing, too, is that I think it's just people need to understand the whole purpose of being here, and I think it's that you have to be able to come up to a common ground to protect people's rights. So like the gentleman that was in here earlier. I'm a hunter, I'm a gun owner, but I'm also respectful. I'm a respectful neighbor. And I think everybody would understand that if they're living in circumstances with, like this gentleman, where you got neighbors shooting guns all night long right next to his house, it's reasonable that you want to do something like that. But I think what's happening is a little bit of overreach. You know, one of the things that I would be curious of, and I know you guys spend a lot of time looking into this, and I haven't seen anywhere. I haven't seen anywhere that I found any numbers to show that there's been a major problem with people having property damage and anybody getting shot by stray bullets. Maybe y'all found something that I didn't. I mean, I understand you'd be concerned about that, but I haven't found it anywhere. So it's like the idea of protecting somebody's ability to enjoy their property without a bunch of noise. I think you have two different issues. You have one issue with being able to have this gentleman not have people fire guns next to his house. I think that's reasonable to take care of that. Somebody, maybe you say, okay, look at this, what you have here, and say, we don't want people shooting within 300 feet of somebody's house. Okay, that's cool. We got that. But when you start expecting people to put NRA certified gun ranges on their property, I just heard this gentleman say a minute ago, that's $10,000 minimum to do that. You got a bunch of rural people, they can't afford $10,000 to go have a shooting range put up on their property like that. That is just excessive, and it's not reasonable. Especially if you can't show any situations out there and show any statistics at all that people's property has been damaged or that anybody's been shot by a stray bullet. It happens in the city of Greenville, maybe. It happens. That's a city problem, not a rural problem. I understand if you have feelings about people getting shot by stray bullets in the city. It doesn't apply to what's going on in the county. If you can show statistics to prove that that's happening, then maybe we need to have something done, but I think that's a little bit of an overreach. 300 feet, not having firearms going off by somebody's house, probably reasonable. I worry that some of the people on the board have personal feelings about gun ownership. And one of the things that I see happening nationwide is that if you can't take away people's rights to bear arms, you can restrict how and when they can use them by doing things like making them follow lots of guidelines that are so restrictive that they can't do it. If you tell people in the county they got to spend $10,000 to build an NRA certified gun range, you are taking away their right to bear arms and shoot on their own property. That is effectively what you're doing. And it's unreasonable. Now, should they be shooting safely? Absolutely. Can you do that without having an NRA certified gun range? Yes, you absolutely can. So I think just maybe it's a time to sit and pause and really look through this again before you pass this and say maybe we can come up to a little bit happier solution that's not quite so restrictive.
Need you to wind it down, sir.
So the last thing I would say is I think it's really important to remember that you guys are here to represent the citizens. How many people have spoken in favor of this? 4 or 5? If you got a whole bunch of people that live in Pitt County, they're all for it, where are they? I haven't seen them, and there's not anybody downstairs in the room that's for it either. So I just remind you, please don't take your personal views and impose your personal views on everybody else, when clearly the people that are here, they're against it. And they're citizens and taxpayers of Pitt County. Thank y'all.
Thank you, sir.
Marcus Jeanette. Should be right outside the door. Marcus Jeanette.
Right here.
Oh, thank you. Perfect. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Marcus Janetti. I'm a resident of Pitt County for about 40 years. I'm also a NRA instructor, concealed carry instructor, and I also run our new shooter instruction on our club. I've probably personally trained about 400 people in the safe use of firearms. That's kind of my mission statement. I want to make sure the community is safe with guns if they're going to have them. Do it safely, and I'm opposed to this ordinance completely. I think it's bad for you guys to punish the law-abiding citizens over a few bad seeds. And personally in Bethel, North Carolina, I've called the police, the sheriff's department probably 5 times on discharge of firearms in the town limits, and they responded just like that, quickly, and took care of the problem. So they should be able to do the same thing with the gentleman that's having a problem now. And thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Brian Newell. No. Megan Weatherington. Megan Weatherington. Daniel Weatherington. John Fletcher. And then the Clayton. John Fletcher's here, ma'am. Okay.
Good evening. I apologize. I had to get a sip of water. But my name's John Fletcher. I live in Greenville. I go by JD. Most people know me as JD. I won't bore you with my life story. But we own a piece of property that's approximately 90 acres in the Grimesland area. And we have it contracted with the federal government for set-asides and nature, anyway, things we can't move, trees we can't cut, we can't even mow the grass. And we have a 300-foot strip. When we laid it out, we had a 300-foot strip down the right side that is left for our enjoyment. Our quiet enjoyment is a phrase I will use that somebody else used. And whether I want to make noise with my quiet enjoyment, it's still my quiet enjoyment. Quiet means you're not bothered by other people. It doesn't mean that you don't make noise when you're doing it. Just like owning a race car, firing a gun, you know, playing an instrument, you're doing what you do, and you're given that right to do it without being aggravated. But anyway, back to my 300 foot. My neighbor on 3 sides have livestock. And if I somehow cannot get them to sign off on this piece of paper, I cannot quietly enjoy my piece of property. And that's something that was totally missed in the way this was written. And I have no problem with doing things the right way, and we have backstops on our farm, but we didn't spend $10,000 to build a backstop. You know, we have an earthen berm, we have 4-inch thick wooden backstops we put targets on, and, you know, we're safe. But the thing I want to reiterate is that it needs to be, anything that goes into place needs to be written so that you take all the potential situations into effect. And that's what this, as it's written, does not do. It does, and it's like, if you have 4 neighbors, one of them is not going to like you, and they're not going to sign off on your piece of paper. And there needs to be, you know, that needs to be taken into consideration. It also should be taken into consideration that you don't need to spend $10,000 to go shoot your rifle, sight it in, take your kid and teach him how to use a gun, you know, have skeet shoot for the family on Thanksgiving Day, things like that. And that's what quiet enjoyment is. All right. And I guess you figure I oppose this, but I do. And to go back, anything of this magnitude probably needs to go before a vote in the county, and not just, you know, not disrespecting your office, your elected office, but anything this important needs to be put to a vote by the people and not be decided on by a few. Y'all have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I have 2 names that may have left, Clayton McKee or McKay. Clayton. And Chad Cannon. That is all that I have signed up to speak from upstairs and downstairs, and I understand there is nobody downstairs or waiting in the hallway to speak.
Sure. Come on up.
I appreciate the opportunity to come before the council tonight. Thank you for that right. I'm a NRA range officer. I work. Oh,
Name and address.
I apologize. I'm Tom Daniel. I've been in Pitt County for 37 years and am a property owner. The last 15, 20 years, I've become an NRA range officer. I'm a hunter education instructor. I'm a qualified instructor for archery for 4-H, instructor for shotgun for 4-H. I do try to do the hunting discipline with 4-H, and I help Dwayne Mary out with a rifle every once in a while. Part of that 15-year legacy is that we've mentored 25 kids a year, so do the math. There's 300 kids that we have worked with, taught them hunter education, taught them the operation of firearms safely, archery equipment safely, and also we taught them some life skills. We make the kids come out and work. They come in, they set up the range. That is safe. That does have berms. They learn team building skills. They learn social skills. They learn how to outreach at the VFW, work in their kitchen. These are all life skills that provide a lot of value for the people of Pitt County and also for them as they get older in their lives. That if this ordinance is voted on and accepted as written, that we will not be able to do that. We will not be able to mentor the youth. And we are operating in a safe manner. Two things that are really just kind of made me want to come out here tonight. I do a lot with the Greenville City Council. It's the first time in Pitt County for the Pitt County Council. But it's the fact is, as a landowner, and I do operate a lot of business here in Greenville and Pitt County, that you're going to force me to ask permission from all of my neighbors to do what I want to do on my property. And that's not saying I want to infringe on anybody else's rights. That I hear the noise and I hear some concerns that probably need to be addressed. But could y'all imagine going home tonight and asking your neighbors to go outside and cook dinner? That's how you enjoy your life. And I'm sorry, I don't mean that as a personal insult, but that is something that you really need to ponder and consider. Do you want to put everybody in a position where they got to walk around to every neighbor and say, will you please sign this piece of paper because I want to use my property in some manner? You don't make the people with the livestock go around and ask all their neighbors, do I have permission to have a horse? Do I have a permission to ask a dog? To me, that just does not seem reasonable and fair. Next thing is the financial impact. The people that you've heard from tonight, they're shooting in a safe manner. They're mentoring youth. They're teaching adults. They're doing so with backstops. They're doing so in a safe manner. To put a regulation where they've got to have an NRA approved range or go through the NRA guidelines is an insurmountable amount of cost that people just can't take that burden. And who's qualified to come out and inspect it? That we pushed up 12-foot high berms on Dwayne's property to make sure that we contained all of our bullets on the property and that there was not a danger to any of the surrounding people. But is it an NRA approved range? I don't know. I'm a licensed GC and a licensed plumber. I'm not qualified to know that. So who's going to inspect all the ranges? But I appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir. And we have one more, and then we're going to close it down. There was someone else that wanted to speak. Okay?
Thank you for letting me speak at the last minute. William Mitchum. I was born in this building. Been here all my life. I'm a private property owner in the county, and I'm also a property owner in the city. I do value my private property rights tremendously. I do value the private property rights of 170,243 people that reside in Pitt County. I ask you, where are we going with this? I've completely sympathized with the people that have had a problem, and I have a solution for that in a minute. But are you willing, as elected members, are you willing to take away the property rights of 170,243 people for 4 complaints and incidences in 2 areas? I mean, is that good stewardship of our private property rights? I mean, really, we're elected here to look after all of our rights. And we're going to let the minority of 2 or 3 people remove our rights. We lose them, we never get them back. We're never up here voting to reinstate our rights. We're always trying to protect our rights, but you guys want to take them away. Now, I challenge you to think about that. Don't take lightly taking away my rights. Don't take lightly taking away these people's rights. Now, what I'm hearing from the concerned, and I sympathize with them, they would like a city-type rule, a noise ordinance or a firearms discharge ordinance, a city-type rule in rural neighborhoods. If it's a subdivided property, plot, plan, private street, street lights, whatever, make a rule in the county that says you can't discharge a firearm in a neighborhood. That's reasonable, okay? I wouldn't want anybody discharging a firearm right beside my house in the middle of the night. The other thing I wanted to point out with your ordinance is it strictly restricts nighttime shooting. Well, if these people that are causing the problem have any brains at all and they want to be a pain in our sides, they can just shoot their guns in the ditch bank in the afternoon after the Cowboys win. Then we're going to be right back in here again, and you're going to be changing the ordinance from dusk to dawn to any time. And then you really have restricted the rights of all citizens and recreational shooters. Don't pick on us recreational shooters. We're law-abiding people. We know what the laws are. We are responsible. Take the reckless people and categorize the people in the county like a city, a little mini city ordinance in that neighborhood, and you got your problem solved. People that live in rural areas cannot give up their rights when they have 25 acres, 50, 100. It doesn't make any sense. Leave us alone and take care of the people that are causing the problems. Okay? You guys can be smarter than this. You can. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think we have 2 acknowledgements that Madam Manager wants to bring to our attention, and then we'll close out the public hearing.
Yes, want to bring to the board's attention, you received an email from Mark Garner expressing his objection to the ordinance, and he asked that it be read at the meeting. I've notified the chair. You've received it by email, and I'm not going to read it now, but it is consistent with the objections that you've heard. I will also notify the board that since the notice of public hearing was published, the manager's office has received calls from 183 individuals with their name and address asking that they be added to the list of those opposed to the discharge of firearms ordinance, and your clerk has presented that list at each of your settings with 183 calls in opposition.
Okay, thank you, Madam Manager. I will close the public hearing. I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. It's very important that we hear from you on issues like this. I will say, as a fellow gun owner, and I own many handguns, rifles and shotguns, I have shared with my colleagues on this board the concerns that I have with this ordinance. But I'm going to open it up. We've closed out, but I'm going to open it up to the commissioners now for discussion. Anybody that would like to make any comments? Commissioner Colson.
Okay, I guess most of these questions I'm going to ask, and I got several of them, so bear with me if you don't mind. It's going to be directed mostly to our attorney. One of the things that we kept hearing about is the 300 feet and property rights and so on. It was my intent when I was on the committee, and I think all the committee members, maybe I shouldn't say that because I don't know that what I'm about to say that everyone would agree with it, but that it was in the, you can't shoot towards a building that's 300 feet. You can't shoot towards an occupied building. But as far as shooting on your property, the intent was if your projectile is not going to go off your property, it's not an issue. If you have a range, as stated a little while ago, that was adjacent to a field and a farmer happens to have cattle, and you're not shooting in the direction of the cattle, it was my intent and my interpretation of the ordinance that it was really more towards the I'm going to say the direction that you're pointing the firearm. Is that true, or have I missed?
Sure. So the ordinance has not been modified in the intent that the committee had since it was drafted. So essentially, the ordinance that was drafted in 2021 is the same ordinance that is presented today with some definitional changes, and then some additions to the exemptions for the restrictions. So essentially, we have the restrictions, and then what the majority of the public is speaking about with the backstop is part of the exemptions to the restrictions.
Yeah, I'm going to get to that. So
correct. So the ordinance is in its intent as the committee drafted. And again, I was not on the committee, but this was the
but
ordinance.
am I misinterpreting it? Because it does not specifically state it in there, but it was my interpretation that when we're saying you can't shoot off of your property onto somebody else's property without their permission, you don't have to go get their permission unless you're going to shoot onto their property. But is it the direction that you're aiming the firearm? Is that?
So that's not listed in the ordinance. What it is, the basic, the law, the premise of it is 300 feet, right? So the action of shooting cannot be 300 feet from the listed structures are school, church, daycare, playground, park, recreation area, residence, business, or occupied structure. So the actual shooting, according to the ordinance that was drafted by the committee, cannot be 300 feet from that structure.
Okay, and I don't know that anybody really disagreed with that, because who wants people shooting at your house? But as far as it being adjacent to a field, and there's nobody living within a half a mile of it, but you're shooting parallel to the property line, but you're shooting onto your property, does this ordinance allow it?
I don't believe that's a restriction. If I'm interpreting you correctly, you're not 300 feet from a structure that is not your own, correct?
That's correct.
Then no, there is no restriction to that shooting.
The only restriction would apply is if the projectile is going to go off of the property and onto somebody else's property.
Sure.
I don't know how that's being unreasonable. And I don't know how, as a gun owner and a Second Amendment person, and I believe I really side with everything that was said out there, but I don't see how this stops that, and that's why I'm going to go through these questions here. As far as the shooting at nighttime, is the exemptions, and I think that's the most important part of the ordinance. It lists several of exemptions. If you look at this, it says to lawfully take birds or animals, I would assume that'd be any animal, a deer or whatever, coyote or whatever, where authorized by North Carolina's general statute or other applicable laws. So there are laws on the books now that allow hunting at nighttime, coyotes and other things. So therefore, this ordinance would not restrict that, would that?
Correct.
Is that true or false?
No, that's correct. That would be an exemption to the restriction.
So then what I really think is that everybody in the audience really needs to pay attention to the exemptions, because when it gets down here to the backstop, do I have to have an NRA style backstop if I'm shooting closer than 300 feet towards a berm that I've got out there? Does it have to be an NRA?
If you're shooting within 300 feet.
Within, yeah.
Yeah, within, then you would need it. No. Or it says or equivalent, but there's other exemptions to it. So,
Madam Manager, would you speak to that?
What's that?
So I think
Did I catch you off guard?
No, you didn't. Just making sure I follow. The way I read the ordinance, if you are 300 feet or more away from the occupied structure, the church, the school, the playground, then there are no backstop restrictions.
See, there's the point. So therefore,
if you
a
are
lot
less
of people
than 300
that came
feet,
up
there
and
are.
argued, they said, well, gee, I got 14 or however many acres of land, and so certainly you can shoot on, more than 300 feet on your property. You don't need a backstop, right? Is that correct?
Correct. If there is greater than 300
If you're
feet
outside.
separation.
Yes, if
then
you're
you
outside
don't-
of 300 feet, no, you do not need a
The
backstop.
backstop is part of an exemption if you are closer than 300 feet with your neighbor's permission.
Commissioner Coulson, if I can jump in there too,
Yeah.
because I think this is an important point of clarity that I read into when we were going over it, and that it was not NRA certified. And I think it was taken into account in that
Or the
conversation
equivalent.
that it was equivalent or substantially in accordance with the idea that it just needs to be a good backstop, right? But
Well,
it doesn't have to be certified.
That was the original intent
Right.
when we met, at least I think that.
But the language as I read it doesn't say certified. It says substantially in accordance with. It's just something entirely different than a certified NRA backstop. In my view. But
The
it's-
words are not certified in there.
Yeah, I mean, the words are not certified or not in there.
So do we need to rephrase that some way to make it, I'm gonna say, clearer and more acceptable?
Sure, and again,
Because the last thing I want to do is vote for this, which right now, is I'm going to tell you, when I walked in the door today, I was all prepared to vote for this thing because it's more than just a handful of people. It's more than 4 people. I have had a lot of people call me and tell me about that. And this ordinance was really not aimed at you, the hunters or people that are responsible with guns. The ordinance was really intended to try to give some protection to people by saying, you got to be responsible when you use the firearm. That's all it was, a responsibility to use the firearm. Maybe it fell short of that. I don't know. And again, I'm interpreting things a certain way. Other people, I guess, can interpret it another way, which gets back to, is the provision of the ordinance well enough scripted to where it doesn't infringe upon things? It's like the turkey shoot. I would say that a turkey shoot would be allowed in here. Does it have to say turkey shoot? But when I read this, it sounds to me like that's a lawful activity, and you could do that. I don't see any problem with that. I don't think that this restricts that, but that's my interpretation. Am I wrong?
I think that's an exemption, the turkey shoot. I think what the gentleman was speaking about would be the nighttime hours, which would need to be modified.
Okay,
But it does give an exemption.
And we use the broad brush there from dusk to dawn. And of course, you got daylight savings time and other things that could complicate things there. But maybe we can put a time on it. I don't know whether it's 9 o'clock at night or something, just throwing something out there now, or 8:30 or whatever, sometime that's not 3 o'clock in the morning. And I know some people, and in fact, somebody actually told me that they had a friend who likes to come home from work at 3 o'clock in the morning, go out in his backyard and start shooting.
Well,
I don't
some
think
of the
anybody
problem is
that I heard tonight
interpretation.
would
You
be
may
in
interpret it
favor of
one way,
that.
and I may interpret it another way.
Yeah, well,
You interpret it different than what Tom is talking
I'm
about.
saying anybody could. Sheriff's Department, if they go out, they may interpret it different.
well, of course. And
Commissioner
it
White,
also gets down to
you're
whether
up.
the sheriff
Supposed to
department
wrap
will even enforce this, or try to enforce this if we pass it. But what I do know, in my own mind, is that even if it's a minority of citizens, we should not have a blatant disregard for their feelings and their safety. And so the intent of the ordinance, when we originally scripted it 3 years ago, with minor drafting changes now, was not to, again, I'm repeating myself, but it was not to restrict anybody's civil liberties. If I thought even for half a second it was an infringement upon the Second Amendment, I would not have ever even thought to vote for it. But I don't see it that way, not when I read it. And I'm wondering, has everybody that's said, come up here, have you read it and did you study the ordinance? Or did your best buddy tell you, hey, they're trying to take my Second Amendment rights away? And I've heard that from a number of people because I've asked them. I said, did you read this ordinance? Well, no. Well, why are you against it? Well, you're trying to take away my Second Amendment. I said, no, we're not. Well, yes, you are. So-and-so said so. Well, did so-and-so read the ordinance? Yeah, that's what he told me. I said, but did he read the ordinance? They didn't know whether he read the ordinance or not. But let's assume he did, and let's say he came to a different conclusion. Well, I guess that's our right as American citizens to interpret things any way we want. But the intent here was not to harm anybody and take away anybody's restrictions. So, am I right in saying that teaching kids to shoot properly? My daddy taught me how to shoot a .22 when I was 8 years old. And if I pointed at somebody, boy, I'd been blistered. And does this ordinance restrict the teaching of those children?
So, again, without having a factual basis with the time, place, and manner of what's going on, I don't have a definitive answer for you.
And many of the complaints that came up here were very general objections, but one of them was to take.
Read the whole thing, 'cause it says an approved range.
Excuse me, sir. This is Commissioner's time to
And
talk.
so,
Everybody's
and
had
so
their opportunity.
one of the things that was brought up is it's going to harm people's right to earn a living. Now, Mr. Richardson, I don't know how it's going to harm your ability to earn a living. I don't understand that. You said that, but you didn't give specifics to where I could understand that. Maybe that would be helpful. To have those type of specifics as to why is there an objection rather than a broad brush, no, I don't like it. So coyote shooting would be allowed because law allows that. I can't even read my notes here. So permission is only necessary from a neighbor if you're going to fire onto their property or you're going to be closer than 300 feet.
Correct.
That's the only time you have to get permission.
Correct.
I don't see that being a restriction, and I think that's just being courteous to your neighbor to go out there and ask them. And I guarantee you, everybody came up here, you got property and you're friends with your neighbors in all likelihood. I could go on, and maybe I'll have other things I want to say later if you'll give me the opportunity as other people speak. New things may pop into my mind. But
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. We're going to move over to Commissioner White. She's next.
So I just want to point out that there are already multiple ordinances in place regarding the reckless discharge of a firearm, shooting someone's property, and shooting towards someone's house. If anything, we should be working on educating the public of our current ordinances and enforcing those ordinances. People move to the county to get away from the restrictions of the city limits, and we do not need to open the door to this slippery slope. Furthermore, even though I am staunchly against this ordinance, as I was several years ago when it came up, if we had droves of people show up tonight like they have, and almost 200 signatures on a petition in favor of that ordinance, even though I didn't agree with it, I would vote for it because I'm elected to be a voice for the people of Pitt County. As elected officials, we are elected to do the will of the people. It is obvious here tonight that the people of Pitt County have showed up and they have spoken up tonight regarding this ordinance. And that's all I have to say for now.
Thank you, Commissioner White. Commissioner Perkins-Williams.
Chris had his hand up. I didn't want to go.
Go ahead. We're going to stay to the left, and then
Okay,
we're going to come
all right.
back to Chris. He's got several
Thank you,
things.
Mr. Chairman. I live in a rural area all my life, Pitt County all of my life. I'm not a lover of guns, but there were always guns in our home. My father kept one sitting by the door, you know, because if somebody come up and he felt threatened, he felt like he had something to pick up. I am a little different from a lot of people because I come from a very religious home. So I brought with me from my district someone who's not in the same party I am. I brought with me someone who didn't look like me. I brought with me someone who had a different profession to have the opposing view. And that view was just like I heard tonight somewhat. And the part that we was missing, would you help me? The part that he was missing, because he had come and talked with me about it, was the exceptions to the rule. He had not read that part into it, and the exceptions and what the rule really said. So I don't measure very well with eyesight. 300 feet, he told me, was something like a football field. Then I understood what the distance was. The problem that had been coming up is that people in the rural area have heavy populated groupings, like subdivisions or little pockets of people living close together. And they had a neighbor, when the children was out playing, shooting, and the children was hollering. Not everyone have the mentality that you have. And the children were afraid to go out, and this is what brought this to pass. And the people in the neighborhood had guns, but they had someone to move in that did not respect the next door neighbors, and they were going on, and the people who heard that are afraid to come forward because people are not as they used to be, and they don't want to hear anything other than what they heard. And Commissioner Coulson had brought up the things that the manager and the attorney, thank you, pointed out to us. To fully understand the ordinance, you have to read what the rule is and then look and see if the exception and the already laws are in there that will protect all the things that you just said tonight. And like Commissioner Coulson, I came to support the ordinance because everybody just doesn't have the respect for the neighborhoods as you do. I'm this far from the county manager, and look how close he and I are. There's 3 feet over here and 1 over there, and unless we follow the exceptions, then if I slip my table over, I'm halfway in between, and it can make a difference. Some people just don't have that understanding. So I really don't see the difference of what you are saying is different than what is in the ordinance, as explained to this person who came fully loaded with the same things that I heard tonight. What would you say it was a difference? It was about what they were saying. Am I correct?
Yes, you brought a gentleman to my office this week who expressed very similar concerns to what was expressed this evening.
So they pointed it out to him. He's a law enforcement person. He's a park ranger. He didn't look like me. He had a difference. He was a he. So I sat there and I listened. And I heard it, and the exceptions were fitting. And it didn't invade on my being close to this neighbor over here, and it didn't disregard how far the manager and I were apart. So I felt pretty happy just sitting in the middle. So what I want you to know is not everyone feel that way. and they feel like they can shoot it. They're sitting over here and they can point where they want to. And this is what's coming out. And we were trying to make safety, because one of our missions is to keep all of the citizens safe. So we have to read all of an ordinance in order to get the position. So you know where I stand. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm finished.
Thank you,
I'm gonna get me
Commissioner.
some coffee.
Commissioner Nunley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This issue, when it was raised years ago and today, is a weighty issue, and this is one that the board, myself, and many others have thought long and hard about, and I, for one, am very appreciative of the continued feedback that we get from the public. One of the good things about working on this board, there is a real effort to listen and to take heed of its public. And I say that as one commissioner, but I really truly believe that we as a board and staff make efforts to do that. And this ordinance, when it was originally drafted, is no exception in that we really turned toward people that it was their lane to level an opinion on this. And does it mean that when it was drafted back in 2021, does that mean that it was perfect, that it is where it needs to be? Not necessarily. But tonight, and hearing from you, and debating amongst ourselves, I truly believe that we can come to a place that we get to the root of what we're trying to do and the intent of what we're trying to do that Commissioner Colson outlined in a way that doesn't infringe on anyone's Second Amendment rights. And I will get to a list of concerns that I heard, and a number of which that we've already made exception to, and I think I won't rehash them. Commissioner Colson's raised them. But it doesn't mean that we can't do better, and make it clear that we're not out to get the private business owner, that we're not out to get the volunteer fire department that's raising funds, we're not out to get the responsible gun owner that's shooting target practice in the middle of their 40-acre farm in the middle of the night if it's not bothering anyone. Again, I'm just one of 9, but when we talked about this years ago, it was really about just making sure that those few that are irresponsible can be encouraged to not act that way anymore in disregard to their neighbors, because it has continued to happen and does happen. What I would propose, and this is, this is just, we're just talking here and we're debating, but there are a number of small changes that I would propose to maybe address some of the concerns we heard tonight and some concerns that I heard in phone calls over the course of the last 2 weeks as this was pending, the hearing. We'll start with the dusk to dawn provision. I received a number of calls and spoke at length with a number of people about the dusk to dawn restriction. And as an overlay, it is a little problematic regarding the turkey shoot, things and how they happen after the fall of dusk. So what, and this is, and Mr. Attorney, I think that you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but what I would like to use is an and trick as it relates to regulations, to make it so that dusk to dawn, or we can change it to 10 to dawn or something that's more reasonable, so that as it gets dark, people can still reasonably use their firearm on the property. But if we were to add between the hours of dusk to dawn or between the hours of 10 p.m. to dawn, and in a way disruptive to the quiet enjoyment of adjoining properties. The concern I heard was if you had 40 acres and you had a lighted range in the back and you were shooting clay skeet, or you're shooting your firearm for target practice at 11 at night, what's to say that ought to be wrong? And they read it, the current provision could potentially be read to be wrong. And I happen to agree that it could be read that way. And so what can we as a board, if we are in agreement that we're not attempting to hurt those types of uses, how can we draft this provision in a way that doesn't touch those folks? Because we're not trying to. At least I'm not trying to. So that I would maybe look at something like that where we tie that use to, again, what we're all trying to do, away from unreasonable use of an activity that's extremely disruptive to the public. Use of shooting skeet on your 40-acre plot in the middle of the night, if it's not hurting anybody, ought not to hurt anybody. I think what I said is that, well, as has never been a problem because no one's ever been bothered by it, and they raised the concern, well, this might bring it an issue, and I might be in violation of this ordinance, and I think that's a fair concern. So I would like us to see maybe if we could try, if everyone's in agreement, to work on that, to tailor this a little bit more narrowly. The second area I'd like to address, and this was raised tonight, and we have an exception at Section 5, subsection 7, that at a shooting range operated by a recognized gun club or by law enforcement agency. And I think a reasonable exception here to add would be, instead of just recognized gun club, but recognized gun club, a licensed firearm instructor in the course of providing instruction, or law enforcement agency, so that we are making clear that we're not out to get the firearms instructor in a position where they're going to be put out of business because what they've always done. Again, and we're just talking, this only has to do with things that are happening within the 300 feet, right? So when we're talking about exceptions, we're talking about things that are within 300 feet of a school, church, daycare, playground, park, recreation, residence, business, occupied structure. Anything outside of that, these exceptions don't even need apply because we're not talking about them. And I think that's really important that we all understand it. We're not talking about you're operating at any other place. We're just talking about within 300 feet of those areas and that restriction, okay? So I would propose that as maybe a way to make clear that, hey, look, if you're a licensed firearm instructor and you operate that within 300 feet of a residence currently, and you do so reasonably and you have for years, that this restriction is not going to infringe upon your right to make a living or to continue to operate that facility in a reasonable manner. I think that's a reasonable thing, and that's something I'd like to see us work if we are going to work on that. The last thing, and this is, let me see, I'm maybe getting a little bit, excuse me, make sure I just don't miss anything here. Section 4C. Okay, yeah. So this was something just recently raised by Commissioner Colson, and the issue came up with the 300 feet. This evening, you've got sounds like maybe a federal protected area, then you've reserved a strip of land next to an adjoining farm with livestock. If the original intent was to have that discharge of a firearm within 300 feet in the direction of livestock, well, let's go ahead and say that here, so that we don't limit that property owner's ability to operate and shoot on their property in a way that infringes upon their right to do so. Again, the import of this ordinance is just to limit discharge of a firearm around where they live, where they go to school. That's it. And the concerns that have been raised tonight are all valid ones. And I hope that if we're doing our job, and you're doing your job by being here, and we're doing our job here, we're coming to a consensus about a way that we can do this in a way that protects our residents that need protection from irresponsible activity, but we don't infringe upon the rights of others. I think we can do it. I would propose those small changes, and I think as a board we can continue to work on maybe finding more if necessary. But not got the big piece of it, which I can't speak for all of you here, but as someone that grew up doing target practice with my dad, we made sure we did it in a place that wasn't next to our neighbors. And we're just saying if you live next to someone that doesn't have that type of mindset, a good neighborly mindset, that we're going to say, well, no, the standard is you can't do it right next door at 300 feet. And that's a standard. And in a way that causes problems. So that's my comment, Mr. Chair and Board. And I'll leave it at that. And if I have anything else, I will. But that's those three changes to maybe address the time in the evening, so that we're making clear that we're not out to infringe on people if it's not disturbing anyone, right? And maybe use an "and" provision there so it's not just a blanket ban. And so that we really talk about reasonableness again, because that's what this is all about. Add language at the section 5(8) or 7 rather, that a licensed firearm instructor in the course of operating their business, that they not be roped into that 300 feet restriction, and then also some directive on the next to livestock, so that we're not in direction of livestock, which is where that's the rule according to wildlife as far as the North Carolina rules, as I understand it. And one more thing, I do think that it would be there's been a lot of talk about. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I did have one thing I forgot. I knew I would. There's been a lot of talk about the concern that the backstop be NRA certified. I think a reasonableness standard would be more appropriate here. I think that the intent when we discussed it again was just to make sure that we were doing it in a responsible way. The intent was not to have people need to go out and get a $10,000 backstop. But the intent is just to say, hey, if you're going to do this within that 300 feet, right, that you have an appropriate backstop. And there's a lot of different language that we could use that maybe is not quite as scary as an NRI certification. But that would also accomplish the same goal, and not run the risk of you as a citizen being potentially hauled into court, because even though that I read that the ordinance says it doesn't say NRA certified, maybe someone else reads it that way, and they bring you into court and try to get you from stop doing it that way. Maybe we can use language that's a little different but has the same effect of, hey, it just needs to be a backstop that works, right? All right, that's it. I'll stop.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other commissioner comments? Okay, Commissioner McGlowhorn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm a former firearm instructor, and I think Commissioner Colson and Commissioner Nunley summarized this very effectively in reference to my feeling. I do not have any intent to take away anyone's Second Amendment. I believe in that, but certainly I believe in the safety of the citizens of Pitt County. Not to regurgitate everything that's been said that Mr. Colson and Mr. Nunley just alluded to. I support their decision, and I think that it is proper that I don't want to see as a firearm instructor, anyone closer than 300 feet, within 300 feet, injured or hurt. That's critical to me, my thinking. And so I'm Commissioner Nunley, if you want to make that in a form of a motion, yeah. Well, after hearing all of this, I certainly will be in favor of this, because I don't want to see anyone closer than 300 feet injured or anything of this nature. So that was the intent of this back in 2021, as Commissioner Colson alluded to, not to have any citizen injured or actually be in a position where they can't even sleep or have any type of peace within their homes at night. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Floyd Huggins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And first, I want to thank all of you for coming out this evening, tonight, to voice your opinion one way or the other. And yes, we represent you, and we represent all of those citizens of Pitt County who are not here. You came out, but there are some that did not come out that may be for it or may be against it. So we represent all of them. I was chair at the time that the committee was formed. Commissioner Colson was on that committee along with some citizens, some gun owners. So it wasn't something that this board came up with. We brought in citizens to come up with ordinance. I'm not a gun owner, so I'm afraid of them. But I know you're gonna say guns don't hurt. It's the people who use them. So I know that. But anyway, it was not our intention to take away rights, but only to protect all of the citizens of Pitt County. Not just the gun owners, but all of the citizens of Pitt County. If people are shooting guns within the 300 feet and close to homes or schools or whatever, then that's a safety issue. And so that was our intention. Our intention were to look at an ordinance that would be that all the citizens would be protected and still have their rights. Yes, maybe we overlooked something, and now we can look at it again. But I do think that we need to also represent the 3 or 4 that came, 5 that came tonight to say that they want us to do something. So I am open to looking at the exemptions, the exceptions, or whatever that Commissioner Colson and Commissioner Nunley have expressed. But I do feel obligated to look at and do something with this ordinance here in Pitt County. As I said, we brought in citizens to help us to come up with this ordinance. Yes, it needs some work to it, but let's work on it.
Thank you, Commissioner
Mr.
Floyd
Chairman,
Huggins.
I'd like to say one thing too.
Okay.
To all of you out there and those in TV land, we could have passed this ordinance last meeting if we wanted to. We did not have to have a public forum. But the board decided that it would only be right and fair to allow you to come up and speak. So from a standpoint of you're angry with us, or me in particular, just know that we did think about that, and you're here tonight because we decided to wait and hear from you. And here you are. Actually, we kind of expected you to be here. So, Chris, are you going to make a motion, and how do we do this, and in what time frame?
So, I was prepared to make a motion, but not for adoption as currently situated. But what I would like is to make a motion to direct staff to incorporate the 4 recommended changes that I addressed in the current proposed ordinance, to hopefully address the concerns that we heard tonight. A lot of the other concerns I feel like we've already addressed.
One exception, Chris. You did not mention it, but Patty Richardson said that it was going to affect her business at Carolina Caliber.
Yeah.
So I would like to reach out to her and find out specifically what she thinks this ordinance does that hurts, because I think that'll be an
Okay.
important
Yeah,
consideration.
yeah, and that's where, with it, well, yeah, I mean, I agree, yeah, so just to make sure that private businesses don't feel like they're being boxed out. But they direct staff to incorporate those changes, bring it back, for another read, and for potential adoption, after those changes have been made so that we can read it, and receive public feedback again. You know,
In the meantime, will you ask the people in the audience to
With-
read it?
and so I'll put that in the form of a motion in the spirit of, taking community input and making this even better and tighter than we did in the first instance. So that's my motion.
I'll second that one.
How about let's restate your motion?
Sure. My motion is to direct staff to incorporate the four modifications. One, the time section restrictions for sub A, sub 2, modifying to not limit responsible use of a firearm that is not otherwise disruptive. And then we could either modifying that time from 10 p.m. to dawn, or using, as I said, an "and" moniker where we're saying that within a certain time period, but if the use is not disruptive, then we don't mess with it. 2, add licensed firearm instructor to section 5, sub 7. This is under exceptions, and this is also reaching back out to Commissioner Colson's want to reach out to the private business owner to make sure that the language that we use there would be acceptable. Then 3, to provide clarity on the restriction on discharging a firearm within 300 feet of a domestic livestock, that has to do with the direction of the firing, not just within the 300 feet. And then addressing the concern about the barrier, that it be a reasonable barrier to industry standard, or something that's doesn't appear to be cost prohibitive to a responsible firearm instructor and a firearm user. Those would be the 4 that I would like, and I would like staff to incorporate those, and then to bring it back before our board for another reading.
You are way more articulate than this country boy. So basically, we're going to take it back to staff, and we're going to have them rework this whole thing and see if we like it any better.
That's exactly right.
Okay. So we have a motion and we have a second. That staff's going to go back, rework this to see if, and that's a if, we like it any better than what it is right now. And this will be
Next
brought
meeting.
back to us in
Next.
our
I like the ruling
first,
of the chair.
first meeting in November.
Yep.
Okay. Everybody good with that?
Yeah.
I like the ruling of the chair.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Let's vote on it.
How do we vote?
Yeah.
If you're in favor of staff going back and trying to rework this thing, then you're in favor of it.
Then your vote one.
Doesn't mean you have to vote for it next time.
That's right.
Okay. I like the ruling of the chair.
Okay. Okay. Want to thank everybody for coming out tonight.
Yeah, I got health.
Commissioner would like to have a small break.
Yeah, I'm cold.
Okay, we'll take 5 minutes then. We're back in session, and before we get started, I'll recognize Representative Florstein Brown with us tonight and our DA Ferris Dixon. Thank y'all for being with us. We'll move on with items for report, and we'll have Russell Hill come up with the 24 tax collection report.
Good evening, Chairman Smith, Commissioners, Manager Gallagher. This evening I'm presenting the September 2024 tax collection report. The fiscal year tax collection rate through September 30th, 2024 for real and personal property was 63.46%. The combined rate 1 year ago for real and personal property was 63.30%. Pitt County Tax Administration continues to pursue all outstanding taxes using the necessary remedies available through the North Carolina General Statutes. If there are not any questions, I'm happy to answer them. If not, it's my recommendation to approve it.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve.
Got a motion and a second, please vote. Thank you, Russell, appreciate you having your report. We'll move on to the financial report. Sam?
Mark, you didn't vote,
Oh,
darling.
sorry. Thank you.
Good evening, Chairman Smith, Commissioners, Madam Manager. Tonight I bring you the September 2024 financial report for the general, solid waste, and EMS funds. We're 3 months into the fiscal year, or 25% of the year. For the general fund, we have collected 40.9% of anticipated revenues and spent 22.5% of budgeted expenditures. Solid waste, we have collected 48.4% and spent 26.6%. EMS, we have collected 48.3% and spent 28.4%. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. If
I'd like
not,
to make a motion that we approve.
Got a motion and a second.
Go home.
Please vote. Thank you, Sam.
thank y'all.
Okay, Madam Manager, you're next.
Yes, I have a handful of items for you this evening. Your next meeting dates, November 4th and November 18th at 6 p.m. in this room, both regular meetings. Item B is Domestic Violence Awareness Candlelight Vigil is on October 22nd, tomorrow evening at 6:30 p.m. in the Superior Courtroom. You recall that you adopted a proclamation with regard to that event, which will be presented that evening tomorrow night. Everyone is welcome to attend. Item C, wanted to give you an update. Several months ago, we talked to you about improvements at the Wintergreen School parking lot to relieve traffic along County Home Road. Those parking lot improvements have been completed. So all funds were appropriated, balances have been paid, and the project is complete. If you go down County Home Road at pickup or drop-off time, you will not experience the same congestion that there used to be with the backup along that road. So that was a win-win project that allows us to continue to develop our district park with the access that we desired and take the congestion off of County Home Road near that school.
Was it done within budget?
Almost.
Almost. What's almost mean?
So the project, the total project cost was 2 payments, one of $500,000, one of $108,000 respectively. All funds were appropriated from Fund 200, the school's capital reserve fund, and from restricted use sales tax. A portion of it was in the 23-24 fiscal year. The remainder is in the current fiscal year. So the total project cost was $608,000, and we hoped it would be closer to $5.
Missed about 100.
All restricted school funds that could be used for only school purposes.
So why, how do we miss it by $100,000? That's 16%. That seems like a lot.
I don't know that it was so much a miss as much as it was a range of sales tax funds dedicated for a project with an estimate, and then the work was completed. They found, and Tim might be able to help me here, what caused the issue. Did they hit a cemetery?
Yeah, so originally, we asked for $500,000. All that, this project was also managed by the school system. We gave them the money, and they managed the project. There was no internal workings of the project by our staff. So I don't know the intricacies about the pricing, but I know initially I think the $500,000 that was allocated by the board was done so based on an estimate. And then when they actually got pricing in from the contractor to do the project, we came back and asked for another $100,000. That's where the $600,000 came from for the project.
Both approved by the board. And I will say too, I do know that one of the complications was that they hit graves.
Yeah, they did some modifications. That may have something to do with some of the overages. There were graves that were found, grave sites that were unknown of, found in the rear corner of the property, so they actually had to move the location of the road.
Do they know who they were?
I'm not sure where that ended up. I know that there was some people out there doing some discovery, trying to figure out
It was not Native American, was it?
No, I don't believe so.
And it was all handled and monitored by the Board of Education attorney, who I'm confident handled it all according to statute, but they did have some upset. Both of those payments were properly approved in Board of Commissioner meetings. That wasn't anything that was done within staff discretion. It was all approved by the board.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
You want this?
Item D, I just wanted to provide an update on the assistance that Pitt County has provided to Western North Carolina. I know it was mentioned at the last meeting, and we haven't forgotten that our neighbors in the West are continuing to have significant struggles as they recover from Hurricane Helene. But just to let this board know, without sacrificing the services that were provided here in Pitt County, we did send through the North Carolina Emergency Management Division 2 EMS paramedics with an ambulance for a period of time. Did not take one of our squads out of service. It was a second-line ambulance and 2 paramedics that were not on duty. We did send, at the request of North Carolina Emergency Management, 1 community paramedic. We sent 2 telecommunicators for several days. Several volunteer fire departments volunteered their staff. At the request of the Department of Health and Human Services, the Department of Social Services is making 3 NC Fast trained DSNAP benefit workers available remotely to assist in the western part of the state. Public Health is also working through Department of Health and Human Services to address public health needs, and the sheriff has worked through the Sheriff's Association to provide assistance and supplies. So I just wanted you to know that Pitt County continues to extend our assistance as coordinated and requested by those coordinating agencies at the state level. Next item was to do a shout out of thanks and appreciation for our planning department, particularly Jonas Hill and Eric Gooby and the remainder of their staff, who put on a very successful, assisted in hosting the North Carolina American Planning Association Conference here in Pitt County last week. It was Wednesday through Friday. They hosted over 436 attendees from all across the state who shared great positive feedback on everything from the presentation content to the receptions. Eric Gooby within the planning department was chair of the host committee for the conference and really did an absolutely incredible job. And so want to thank them for bringing that conference here to Pitt County. And I was pleased to be able to make welcome remarks to a huge room filled with planners last week. Item F is to let you know for the 28th consecutive year, our Financial Services Division has received the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award for 24-25, beginning July 1, 2024 budget. And so we are pleased and thank the team for their continued incredible efforts working together to achieve this award each year. Each year the standards seem to become a little bit tougher, and we raise the bar to meet those challenges, and I'm thrilled to recognize that accomplishment. Also, I've learned that Sheriff Paula Dance received the President's Volunteer Service Lifetime Achievement Award. It was presented to her in Charlotte, and I thought I'd pass that on to this board as well. And then finally, I have one last item that's not printed on your agenda. I think Public Information Office may have a slide to add to your screen, and that's just with our continued animal services events. There will be a special event on October 31st called Halloween with half-price adoption fees for cats and dogs. And this is consistent with the special events that we've had on Saturdays and the Clear the Shelter week leading up to this event. Between Clear the Shelter and our 2 Saturday Catterdays, we had over 130 adoptions, with this next special event being on Halloween. And so we continue to be pleased with the way Animal Services has stepped up to address the congestion within the shelter.
How do we get that word out? That's being done?
It is out through social media, through volunteers, through advertising. And our Public Information Office works very closely with Animal Services to have targeted media campaigns to reach the audience, and it has worked based on the number of people who have attended and adopted. That's all that I have.
Thank you, Madam Manager. We'll move on to items for consent. I'll entertain a motion for
So
that.
moved.
Got a motion here, second. Okay, got a motion and a second to
You
approve
got
the items for consent. Please vote. Okay, we'll move on to items for decision. Madam Manager, I'll turn that back over to you.
Yep, the first one is Veterans Treatment Court. You've heard about this, and I reported on it last meeting. Your recommended action this evening is to accept the $900,000 grant from the federal government to implement a Veterans Treatment Court and to add to your head count one position for a coordinator, the full cost of which would be covered by this grant. District Attorney Ferris Dixon is here tonight and has been worked very closely with this item, and this is your formal approval. It is something that would normally be on your items for consent, but given the significance of this program and the dollar amount, we moved it to decision.
Can I move to approve?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Congratulations, Mr. District Attorney.
Commissioner Floyd Huggins, yours hadn't registered yet.
I mashed it.
There we go.
Slap it.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, Madam Manager, we'll move on.
The next one is the jail medical contract, approval of year 3 contract amendment, and the jail RFP. I don't see anyone here from the sheriff's office. The recommendation for this item is that both matters be postponed for consideration until your first meeting in November, so that the sheriff's office and county staff will have an opportunity to review the RFP together, and you just keep the
Do
two
we need
items
to
tied
approve
together.
Motion to defer to November 4th.
Second.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to defer to November.
I have a couple of questions about that, though. Can I bring them up now?
Sure.
All right, so I read the whole contract. It was not light reading. There are several things in it that I really was questioning and wondering about, and I called Janice and I asked her, I said, well, what about timing? If this goes out for an FRP to be presented to the world, when will it go out, and will anybody have enough time to be able to review it? And so I was hoping there'd be at least a window of 90 days. The way I was reading it, it was going to be 30 days. And now, Janice, you said that you talked about things and you think it's going to be 60 days? Is that what you told me the other day?
So the timing for the release and the amount of time that a
Somebody can
bidder would
submit.
have is something that the sheriff is open to discussing and changing from the original proposal, and I think that would be part of what we can bring back at your next meeting.
Well, I won't be here. Yeah, well, I'll be here for the next meeting, but I won't be here for this when it goes through. And all I'm wanting to do is plead with the board, the new board, to pay particular attention to the contract and don't get hornswoggled by delays or something that's going to be an inappropriate amount of time to be able to review it and be able to present. And there were some other things that were in there, such as, and Janice, you said you were going to strike these, and that was things that somebody that bid on it, an FRP, they had to have, multiple locations throughout the state, and they had to have certain contacts and so on and so forth. Well, that's not fair to anybody local like Dr. Servey or Dr. Leonhardt. I'm thinking of them because they've come twice now and talked to us about this. That's not fair to them to ask because they won't qualify. And so the contract, you got to be careful. It could be written in such a way that there's not fair competition. And I don't think that's fair to the county, because if I'm not mistaken, when we finally got into the well path deal, it ended up costing us close to $1 million more the first year. Now, am I wrong in my memory on that? Wasn't there a huge amount of extra expense?
There were additional expenses.
A lot.
And then they continue to increase year over year.
Yeah. And so that's where the bait and switch comes in that Chris kind of alluded to the last meeting. And well, again, I won't be here, but please just be careful about that contract.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, we'll move on to the next one, number 3.
Yep.
Is Dawn going to come out, or are you going to handle that?
Dawn Jones can come out. This is another item that, due to its significance and importance, is on an item for decision, although is not necessarily controversial. Turn it to Dawn to let you know the good news about the technical video systems proposed contract.
Yes, the board approved the capital improvement project for the rip and gut of the auditorium and the control room. A bid went out in June, and a proposal evaluation performed by an external independent and internal panel showed that technical video systems scored the highest total, and the recommended motion is to award the contract base price plus with the add-ons to technical video systems and authorize the manager to execute associated documents.
Okay, it's a pleasure to the board. Got a motion to hear second?
Second.
Okay, let's vote.
You are going to love these improvements when they're done.
Commissioner McGlynn, there you go, yours clicked in. Thank you, Dawn. Thank you. Okay, number 4, Madam Manager.
Yes, you have a recommended appointment to the Juvenile Crime Prevention Council on page 63 of your materials, and it's recommended that you nominate Lauren Tucker for appointment to that council.
So move. Second.
Motion and a second.
Oh, we got to vote, right?
You gotta take your. take that
Okay,
apple.
and number 5, Madam Manager.
It is recommended that you nominate Claire Boyd to the Shepherd Memorial Library Board of Trustees for a term to expire September 30th, 2027.
So moved.
Got a motion and a second. Please vote. Okay, is that it, Madam Manager?
That's all that I have.
We'll move over to the right here, and we'll start Commissioner Ward. You got any comments?
No comment.
Commissioner Nunley?
No comments.
Okay.
I have a comment.
Okay.
As a commissioner north of the river, I am concerned about the recommendation of the community having to deal with the establishment of a new gas station over by Brookhaven. It is right next to Welcome Middle School, and if it's at the corner of, it's near 903 and North Memorial Drive. It's a lot of temptation for the children to be in danger from walking out and going over there. That is right, it's gonna be right across there. I don't know how we can address it. It is the ETJ area, which is the no-man area of it, but I'm worried about the students leaving Welcome Middle School and walking across the 4-lane to sneak away and get snacks or whatever they do when they want to break rules. And at some way, I am not supportive of that business being placed at that point, because there are other places in the county that it can go. And because Belvoir needs some development, but I'm worried about that because it is a safety feature. I see it. So I just want to say that, and I hope in some way that as a part of this board, we can address it, because it's too close to Welcome Middle School. Is right across the street, and I'm concerned. And that's what I wanted to say about it, and I wanted to make it publicly known that I am certainly against where they want to put it, right by going through the Brookhaven. I got the right subdivision, I do believe. Right there. Okay, thank you, Jonas. That is the subdivision, and I am definitely against it. I see it as a hazard for the students.
I
Okay.
don't believe that's within
Thank
the
you.
jurisdiction of this board.
But I don't know what we can do about it. Because when something comes out and someone get hit crossing that street, I want the records to show that I was against it being placed there. I see it as a safety feature against the welfare of that community, right there by the school. And middle school children do a lot of stuff. I'm very much against it. I'm not saying don't bring it here. I'm saying do not place it at that place. It is not the place. Bill Bar be happy to have it. They don't have anything.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner McGlawhorn?
No comment.
Commissioner White?
I just want to congratulate Mr. Croom and the rest of his staff in financial services for winning that very prestigious award.
Commissioner Floyd Huggins?
Well, excuse me, I do have a comment, kind of long, but I attended my first Board of Directors meeting of the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners, Directors Meeting Representatives. It was held October 11th and 12th in Greensboro. So I'm the representative for District 2, which is Hertford, Bertie, Martin, Beaufort, and Pitt. And one thing that they reminded us of the upcoming opera funds obligation deadline. It's coming up December 31st. We at that meeting, we received and voted on our legislative goals, the state and federal. And those goals came from the steering committee. So we voted on those, and they will be presented at the legislative conference in Wake County, November the 14th and 15th. We voted on a code of conduct policy and also the audit report. So, so I also found out as a director, find out what my role is and the expectations of them. So, anyway, I just want to let you know that I went and represented Pitt County along with the other counties in the District 2. So.
Thank you, Commissioner Floyd Huggins, for doing that. Commissioner Colson?
Have I not said enough tonight?
No.
Well, I'm not going to say that. I may be thinking it.
You're gonna miss me.
Oh, Mr. Manager, I forgot one thing. As the manager talked about the western part of the state, there were directors, commissioners there from the western part of the state, and they really said they appreciate the eastern counties sending help, sending assistance to them. The Davidson County, Avery County, and Transylvania County commissioner said to me when he found out that I was from Pitt County, he said, I want to thank Pitt County, Greenville. When I saw a fire truck from Greenville, I said, oh, they had a long way to come to help us. And, you know, those Western commissioners really appreciate our assistance from the East. And another thing they said that they were trying to dispel the lies that are being told that, you know, that they're not getting the assistance that they need from FEMA, from the governor, and all that. And they were really wanted to say that they were doing what they could to dispel those lies because they are receiving assistance.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Colson, did you have any comments?
No.
I'll entertain a motion to go home.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Thank you all for being here.